Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest you probably heard multiple times in season 1. I'm pretty sure that this is her 4th appearance on the podcast. She is an amazing practitioner. She has so many tools in her toolkit, and she's also a great friend as well. And her name is Cassie Aurora. So she is now on the podcast to talk about homeopathy, because after giving birth to her daughter Bonnie, she was struggling, honestly, for a little bit. She talks about this in the episode, but I was even helping her with some nutrition stuff, and it was helping, but there was something missing. And I honestly believe that everything happens for a reason. So she then found the world and the wonders of homeopathy, something that I personally knew what it was, but I kind of never experienced using it and never had personal experience with that until Cassie guided me through some protocols recently. But for those who don't know, and just want a little reminder, Cassie is a fertility homeopath. She's a yoga teacher. She's previously been on to talk about astrology. So she knows a lot about a lot of different things. And she specialises now in helping couples to conceive naturally, to thrive in pregnancy, and be empowered in birth and beyond. I know she has big goals with her business, and she really found her experience during pregnancy, labour and postpartum difficult. So now her mission is to help others hopefully not suffer like she did. So in this episode, we discuss what exactly is homeopathy and her story about how she found it, factors contributing to infertility these days and why is infertility on the rise. She covers this from a homeopathic standpoint. Remedies, common remedies for pregnancy, labour, postpartum, and then additional postpartum tips as well, and what she's doing differently next time round, because she's already planning her second pregnancy. I think she said at first that she wouldn't want to go through it again because she had such a horrible experience, but I think because she now has these tools available to her, and she really has tapped into her wisdom and her witchy powers. So she has lots of things that she would do differently, and she's sharing them with us today on the episode, so hopefully we can prevent some mistakes that she made. So I am more excited than ever to share Cassie and her amazing skills with you all for a completely different subject this time around. But that said, it's kind of all similar. I think this is everything on her path has been leading her to where she's at today. So I'm really proud of her, and I know you're going to love her as much as I do. Hi, Cassie. Welcome back. I think for the fourth or fifth.
I thought it was a third, so
I think it's, yeah, because we did one in pregnancy, but you might have been like baby brain situation going on. I remember you were highly constipated at the time, so that you might have blocked that out from your memory as a trauma.
no, I remember that significantly. Actually, I think about that like very often.
And each time you've been on, you've discussed a different subject, I think. So we've covered like astrology, pregnancy, and now I've got you on to talk about homeopathy, because this is now like your thing. You're obsessed with it, and it's like changed your life. And I've even tried it since you've been studying, and I'm like, oh my God, why have I not known about this sooner? So I've just covered a little bit about your bio and who you are and what you do, but maybe from a follow-on from last recording, which I'll link in the show notes, when you were pregnant, what happened for the following months after that, and what led you to finding homeopathy?
Wow.
Like, where do I begin?
Everyone now knows me as the constipated woman. Yeah, so wow. So I went through pregnancy. I don't remember that podcast, so God knows where I was. I'm guessing I was somewhere in my second trimester. And then I gave birth. I had a lot of issues with the system when it came to the end of pregnancy and my birth. I am someone that really likes to do things in a way that aligns with nature, with my body. I'm not like an idiot. Like, I will seek out help in an emergency, but birth was definitely something that I felt really fine about. And then towards the end of my pregnancy, I had a measurement at like a routine midwife appointment, and I was measuring like small on my fundal height, which is like how big your bump is, basically. And then they referred me for scans, and they kept telling me like my baby was small, and I knew at the time there was an error on ultrasounds and how accurate they were. And I kind of said, look, they're not accurate. You know as well as I do, and that, yeah, we're not worried because you're small, but just come back for another scan. And then next thing I know, it just kept going on that Bonnie was measuring small. That was Bonnie. I was pregnant with Bonnie at the time, and like they're just laying on the pressure that basically I'm gonna basically have a stillbirth and all this crazy stuff. And that they wanted to induce me, and I felt very strongly that I didn't want induction or an elective C-section. That was not for me. And they just kept laying on thick, and I kept saying no up until about 41 weeks, where they were like, you really need to be induced now, because you're at danger of like your baby being stillborn and all this stuff. And it was really horrible, and I didn't want that. And at the same time, you're a first-time mum, you're impressionable, and there's only so much like coercion that can happen before you cave and just leave me alone. So I kind of decided to go for acupuncture. I didn't know about homeopathy at the time, so I went for acupuncture. Said, just get me going. She's a midwife near me who does acupuncture, and she gave me acupuncture. Sure enough, about 6 hours later, I began like, I would say not active labour, but it was very established contractions. And anyway, I was like, I'll just go for the induction and tell them I don't need it because I'm like in labour, definitely. And then I got there and they were like, oh, here's your wristband. And like I was signed in even before like I'd seen anyone. And they were like, oh no, we'll just put the gel on, and like the minimum it'll do is just move things along. And I'm very sensitive. So essentially what happened was they put the gel on, and then the next thing I know, I'm having like contractions that are all over the place. Everything went from being very natural to being very unnatural. And I had like a 45-minute labour from when the gel went on to like Bonnie being out, which is, if you don't know anything about labour, that's really, really quick for a first time labour. Maybe not for a second, but to be honest, it was absolutely terrifying. And when I was in labour, they kept like trying to make me lie down. They kept saying, stay still because we need to monitor the baby. Like they kept telling me to push harder, and my body was like ejecting, like, I just ignored them at this point, but it was horrible just being told to push. There's like 4 women in there, I don't even know what was going on.
Completely against your natural instincts.
Yeah, like I knew it's obvious when to push. When you're with induced labours and things like that, you have no idea. If you have an epidural, you're not going to know when to push. So obviously you need to be coached through it. And obviously there's a lot of more risks than ending in C-section for reasons I won't get into like now. But anyway, it was a complete mess. I wish I'd have just stood my ground, because for me it was very traumatic in that I wasn't heard. And it's all like my own fault really for not learning to stand up for myself. But you're a first time mom. I was very immature back then, and because of that, we were both in shock after she was born. Then there was a whole placental birth, which no one really talks about, but it is hard work. And they class it as an emergency if you don't birth the placenta within an hour, and that you have to go into theatre in certain hospitals, but it's most hospitals, and that's not really true actually, that it's emergency. And so that become another thing. And
they just want you like in and out, don't they? They're like, let's get you in like this time, let's whip the baby out and then on to the next person.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels. And I couldn't have my skin to skin. Bonnie was quite traumatized, I think, because fast births can be very traumatic for babies. She wouldn't feed, she wouldn't breastfeed. We spent about 2 weeks really trying. I was just like in complete shock. She was in complete shock. It was just a mess. And then I kind of gave it with the breastfeeding, which was a big, that was a really, really, really horrible decision for me. But I was like, everyone was like, you need to just stop trying, and the breastfeeding community weren't really helpful. Like Amy was really helpful, our mutual friend Amy, she was so helpful. And when I said I literally can't do it, she was like, do you know what, it's fine, you know. And so
You
I
felt like
just
you
need
needed
to
permission.
yeah.
Someone to just tell you, like, no, just stop. This isn't going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. And you know, I really struggled afterwards, postpartum. I had body aches, you know, everything was just, it was just not good. It was mainly like the intrusive thoughts. Like I was very, and when I say intrusive, like I'd be walking down the road and I'd just be like, what if I just jump in front of that bus now? And it was just really bizarre. And I just didn't feel right at all. I felt a lot of grief. I didn't feel baby love, you know, you're meant to feel all that love. I didn't feel any of that. I was like really struggled, fell back into like a lot of restrictive eating patterns. I really struggled in that period, and it was a very, very, probably one of the darkest times of my life, if I'm honest. But I needed that to kind of get to the level of kind of peace and, I guess, healing like I've experienced now, if, for lack of a better word. So I then was like 3 months postpartum, kind of like asking the universe, please just give me something that will help me feel better, because I was just not the person I wanted to be, just couldn't cope. Um, so then I was walking in the park, and about an hour later, I just had this light bulb moment that I should try homeopathy. And I didn't really know about homeopathy. I'd had a friend who'd given me arnica once, and I was like, okay, this is shit, doesn't work, because I was so much into like detox and like material stuff. Even though I was into Reiki, I would like take loads of homeopathy and stuff, and it won't work because you know that can happen. And then I had my first appointment, and I remember the first remedy I took, bearing in mind my body was aching all over, like I could barely pick up Bonnie at this point because my hands was and joints were in so much pain. And then the next morning I woke up and like all the pain had gone. I remember in the night I'd like sweated, had a big sweat, and then all the pain had gone. I was like, oh, okay.
What did they think
And
that pain was? Like, looking back, what would you put that down to?
I'm not
General
sure.
inflammation?
I think so, but like I didn't have a remedy for inflammation. I had a remedy for I had a remedy called syphilinum, which is it is like a cell where the body sort of is more destructive. So it makes sense. With emerald and hornbeam. So really emotional remedies actually. So I think the joint pain was largely emotional. Um, but yeah, anyway, I just had a nice steady kind of lifting up, and then like I felt loads better. But I think about the second protocol I had, where I did like a HPV vaccine detox, was like the one that changed me a lot. Loads came out. I did a birth control detox, and that was when my health really started getting a lot better. My
And I remember
hormones
your
started
skin
coming
was
back.
like freaking out then, wasn't it?
Yeah. I
You're
had a
like,
lot of
what's
like,
going on with my skin?
yeah, because it was like all the crap coming out, like it was a lot. And then, you know, I've done various other things, but then I decided about 3 months in, because we had a lot of things with Bonnie and night terrors, and she really struggled. It was like when I realized that homeopathy was like super powerful, was yes, with myself, and I was like, okay, this is amazing. I kind of started reading, but then she was having these night terrors, and I booked her in, and she was having a lot of problems with many things, and we gave her a stramonium 10M, which was her birth remedy. It's for fast births and cesarean section birth. It's and you could use it even if you're an adult and you had traumatic birth, if it was relevant. And her night terrors literally stopped that night. A lot of things stopped. And you know, she would get eczema, really bad eczema that went, you know, she, like when I saw it with Bonnie, like I knew it wasn't placebo. And I remember when you came around and visited, and she had that
Yeah.
contact reaction, she started getting hives all over her hands and her face, and I gave her a remedy, and it went within
Like
as quick as
seconds.
it came, as quick as it went.
It was mad. I was like, what is going on? That's when I was like
And
first like learning about homeopathy, and I knew, like, I believed you that it works, but just to see it a rash and hives and everything settle in seconds was amazing.
Yeah,
And that proves that it's not placebo, because the kid's not, and even animals, like people use it on their pets, and obviously they can't lie if it's getting better. They don't know what's happening.
Exactly. And we've used it for her with sickness, where she had a stomach bug and within 30 minutes she's like running around. And we've used it with ear infections, when I didn't know she had an ear infection for like 3 days and she was screaming. And then I found out she had one, and within 30 minutes of having the remedy, she's like back to normal. And you can't say the same for antibiotics and stuff like that. So really for me, like that was kind of when I'd already started studying. Like I knew that it was like my calling. It called to a part of me that felt like I knew it. And my supervisor only said to me the other week, I prescribe, like I've been prescribing for years, so there's some part of me that thinks, I really know this on an innate level, but I think it's because it's nature. It doesn't mean I get every prescription right first time, but
And you
so
recently guided me through a wisdom tooth infection, and that's when I was like, this stuff works, because I managed to avoid antibiotics for like quite a bad wisdom tooth infection. The dentist was like, please take them, this is quite serious. And I was like, I'll just see how I go on with my, I think it's like chamomilla at the time, because I was taking painkillers, but obviously I started to feel the effects of them and I didn't like it. And within taking, like my remedy at the time was chamomilla. It could be different for someone else's tooth infection, but within minutes of me taking that, I had the same pain relief as an ibuprofen, but without all of the negative side effects.
Yeah, that's how it
I'm
goes.
also hooked now.
Yeah, and it was sulfur as well. I mean, there's so many, and we even have like homeopathic antibiotics. If it did get to that, we just say take the it's called the war mix. But yeah, and it's like a homeopathic penicillin. Like, so sometimes we do use them. It's very rare, because usually the body knows what to do. Sometimes homeopathy just comes in and basically stimulates it to do what it needs to do. And antibiotics kind of, they just suppress the symptoms or wipe out all the bacteria, but that doesn't mean it's healed. And I'll have cases where someone's had chronic ear infections for their childhood, and then we do an antibiotics cleanse. The ear infection comes back again after like 20 years, but then it will go, because they can treat it with homeopathy, and it will not come back. And it's amazing how many infections, like, as you know, can live in your body and create havoc on like the most subtle level, until you actually do the deeper work. And so, with homeopathy, I've done a fair few protocols in the last year to know that it's life-changing. And for me, I went from a place of being really, really traumatized with birth, traumatized around the loss of my mum, which I don't think I'd ever been able to process. I lost her when I was 15 very suddenly. I don't have any family really. I've got my sister, got my brother who's kind of lives away, like we're not close, and that's it. My mum was really kind of it. And feeling really like alone in the world and a bit odd, to feeling very at peace with my life, very content most days. I don't really get stressed now. I don't know, like I just feel like totally at peace, and I'm excited to have another child. It's probably the first time in my life I felt real love and joy again in a long, long time.
I can even see a difference in you in, like, I can't remember, when was your hen due? Like September?
Like the 1st of September.
Yeah. So like even since then I can tell like way more chilled energy from you. And we're just over Zoom now. I can even tell from that. And you said this past prescription that you've had, this past protocol, you've noticed a big shift. And yeah, it's definitely reflecting.
Yeah, I asked her to deal with my control issues around
Can
health.
I get some of that?
Well, most people in our space, they've still just got it in the background. We redirect it, and just because it's a positive form, I would be like hoover. I still love hoovering my house, to be fair, but like I would be very anal clean, be very controlling around food. Like I was relaxing, but it was still there. Like everything was still. It was like I was holding on, and my nervous
than what it has been, but it's still not normal.
Yeah. And my nervous system was so on edge because of like the shock of birth and the shock of my mum and these experiences that I hadn't, these like traumatic experiences that I hadn't been able to just, I'd done deep work, but nothing was really getting to that level, even somatic work. And then I had another remedy, which is for, it's a big remedy for like, who am I? Like, it's like you were on that track and then now I'm on that track and I can't reconcile who I've become and what my life is. And it's also a great remedy for like IVF babies. And you know, it's like the remedy of our times, to be fair.
Mm.
But they were like, and there was another remedy I think I had, but I asked her to just go for the trauma. And that was like the most liberating. So, you know, homeopathy does work on material levels and mental, emotional, you know, it's incredible really. And you know, it's even hard to explain how much I love it. It's just, it's like pure truth. So yeah, and now I'm, you know, working with patients, as we meant to call them, but I always call them clients, I don't know.
You'd be used
You
to
know,
that from your other work.
yeah, yeah. For fertility and you know, postpartum. So I'm really enjoying that. And have a few children I work with as well. And you know, because once you kind of have the mum, you kind of have the children and
Yeah.
kind of
You've
get
got
the
them for the whole
family.
journey. So I'm guessing
Yeah.
homeopathy is safe. Is there anyone who shouldn't use it, who can't use it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the only thing I would say is there's homeopathy cures and it gives you a complete cure. You know, it's safe, effective, and permanently heals, permanently cures. And that's really why it was brought about, because Dr. Hahnemann, who kind of came up with it at the time, about 200 years ago or something like that, realized that medicine didn't actually do anything. And he was sick of that. He was like, there has to be something. Um, you know, and so everyone can have it, whether we can cure things like, for example, Tourette's can be cured. But if you get it after puberty, you're never really going to fully cure it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Other people argue you could, I don't know.
I'm
And
guessing you
then
could like
things
really
like,
still control and manage it really well.
yeah. And then if you have something like endometriosis, when there's scar tissue, most homeopaths will say, look, you can't reverse the scar tissue, but you can prevent more and you can manage pain and manage hormones, which is true.
And it's still loads
But
more than the conventional options, conventional medicine.
yeah,
That's just like shutting
yeah,
everything down. Let's turn off your hormones.
yeah.
Like
And then
obviously
like
you're
with
going to get symptom
PCOS,
relief, but then you get like a million other problems as a result.
yeah, yeah. And the same with PCOS. I've just done a slipping massive assignment on PCOS. Jesus Christ. Vivian, help me. But with PCOS you can shrink, you know, cysts,
Mm-hmm.
they shrink, go away, and fibroids. So, you know, it's a mixed bag. It depends how long you're willing to work with it, you know.
And
Some things are more,
is it classed as energy medicine? Like these little tiny pellet things or the liquids that people have? Like what is actually in there?
yeah. Well, a lot of people call it energy medicine because they don't, there's everything material like supplements and herbs and tinctures. And then beyond that, because we can't measure a molecule, it's just energy after that
Mm.
point. I don't like that term because I think when we use that term, all of a sudden science goes, well, what's the
Yeah, and
mechanism
people
of
get put off.
action? It's not plausible, goodbye, and no one wants to know. So I call it potentized medicine, just to be more confusing.
That's
Which one
super catchy.
because when you start out with, like, say you start off with arsenicum, which is a poison, if you arsenic, you dilute, all remedies are diluted and succussed, apart from things like tissue salts or something like that, or tinctures. You can take tinctures in homeopathic form, but they start to get diluted and succussed, which is banging, until they go beyond Avogadro's limit, which means there's no detectable molecules in there. And these succussion, like if you look back through alchemy and the schools of alchemy, releases or dynamizes, and the word dynamize meaning raises the frequency or energy of the substance. And this is where everyone goes, well, it's not, it's everyone gets
Keep
confused.
listening, people.
Yeah, but it basically gets beyond a material substance to the energy or the, imagine if arsenicum or arsenic had a personality. It's like you're taking the personality of something. So it's a bit like if you went and hung around with loads of hairy bikers. After a day, you'd probably be acting a bit like a hairy biker, or
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably not a great analogy. You know, and so how homeopathy works is it's like cure like. So the remedy you take, if you took that and you were healthy and you took loads and loads of it, you would eventually start taking on the energy of that remedy. So say that you took chamomilla, for example, you'd start having incredible pain, you'd be hypersensitive, you'd be maybe hot and red in the face, you know, very angry, angry pain, hyper pain, nerve pain. And then that would be like approving because you'd started acting like the remedy. But say that you have an illness like your tooth that was that level of pain, you were that like ill with it, that match those symptoms of chamomilla, then you take that medicine, and that medicine, it like resonates with where you're at. And so that artificial disease that matches your real disease makes your body have a healing response towards the artificial disease, so that your body actually does the healing it needs to do. So it directs your vital force, which is kind of like, you know, that if you've got a cold, your body eventually heals. There's that vital force, that intelligence that you have that heals the cold. Sometimes it doesn't quite do it. So homeopathy precisely directs the vital force where it wants it to go. So when it comes to chronic issues, obviously people have chronic issues that they never fully heal from, or they do loads of material work and they're feeling there's loads of improvements, but something just doesn't quite go, then there's a space for homeopathy. Because if someone's eating pretty well, they've got no deficiencies, you know, they're fairly balanced, homeopathy can be the thing that kicks their vital force into doing the thing it needs to do to heal. And depending on schools of homeopathy is how it's done. I'm very flexible as a prescriber, but some people are just classical. There's one remedy and it's not detox. It's not tautopathy, which is like drug stuff. It's basically a classical remedy and you would just take that. Other people really like detox protocols, which focus a lot on allopathic cleansing and heavy metal cleansing, and so things like that. So you can do that with homeopathy, and the advantage, I guess, is it's more gentle and it nudges the body to just detoxify what it needs to rather than what it doesn't need to. So, you know, with the metal cleanse, say that you've got really high cadmium, really high copper, something like that, and you have fine levels of tin or something and aluminium, you take polymetals, the body will just detox what it needs to. It will leave out what it doesn't.
Yeah,
Because
it's
the
not like
body
force the body to just like deplete itself.
exactly. And a lot of metal cleansing, you know, is it chelation, 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 whatever. I don't know, yeah, chelation or whatever.
Chelation.
That can really, yeah, chelation. I got it right. Be really aggressive on the system, whereas homeopathy is a gentler way. So it's kind of like the yin to the kind of nutritional therapy yang, and the idea would we would just do both.
Yeah.
And often it's the missing piece, you know, for a lot of people, it is a missing piece. So yeah,
so we can classify it in its own form of medicine. Like we've got the material stuff, as you're saying. It's not typically just energy medicine. It's like it's homeopathy.
Yeah, it's a full system of medicine. It's as complete as allopathy, I'd argue probably more, but it's a complete system where any diagnosis could be treated with homeopathy. And in places like India, it is because it's cheap.
Yeah.
You know, it's really cheap and it works.
And what are some of the things that affect this vital force? So if that's like a big driver of chronic illness, chronic infection, is it similar things that maybe I talk about on the podcast, or environmental stuff, toxins, infections? Are there any extra things?
Yeah, so it's things you talk about. We have things called miasms in homeopathy, which are your genetics. So you inherit miasms. So it's a bit different in homeopathy. We have like syphilitic miasm, psoric miasm, which everyone has. And these are like diseases that are in our bloodline, and often with like British Europe, people are quite tubercular, but we inherit them. And things like vaccination is one thing that will activate a miasm and bring it in that we otherwise wouldn't have. Just susceptibility through poor diet. Trauma's the big one. Poor diet, yes, but the bigger ones are trauma, vaccinations, because they alter your natural susceptibility, and you are just susceptible to certain things where other people aren't. So say that you're out in the world and you meet Lyme or mold. It depends on the strength of your vital force, but if your vital force gets bashed down, it gets to a point where obviously it's more susceptible. But when it comes to chronic disease, the vital force usually is so depleted at that point, it actually is a case of raising the energy. And people that are generally healthy get quite horrible sick acutes, like they get really violently sick for like 24 hours every season, and that's actually quite healthy. We want to worry when we don't get sick at all and we've just got chronic issues.
And have your body react and sweat it out, vomit it out, and then be good after 24 or 48 hours.
Yeah, like a strong vital force, you know. But it's all the same things as pesticides. It's all the same things that result in ill health, probably about the vital force, and also bad relationships and bad home life, and the things we maybe don't think of, environment being, and career, not living your purpose. There are some schools of homeopathy that say it's all to do with spiritual what's the word, like contentment. One of they say that in their teachings, and then when you see the clinical work, it's really different. But they say it's all a spiritual disease. Everything is a spiritual disease, and you have to take or leave all of that stuff. But I think it's all in there, so I kind of like to be as integrative as possible.
So I'm guessing there's going to be like thousands and thousands of remedies.
Yeah, sorry to tell you, there's absolutely there's just, I mean, they make remedies from all things. You have poisons, snake venom, plants, minerals, metals. Then you have colours, got remedies from colours, stones. There's a remedy made from X-ray. There's a remedy made from mobile phone radiation. There's remedies from what's one of the like rainwater. So one of the big ones for if you feel you've got like shedding effects, there's like remedies for that, which are made from disease products or from there's remedies made from like poo bacteria. There's remedies made from actual allopathic medicines, organs. So we use organs for organs, a bit like you eat liver for liver. I really love just looking through all the remedies you can get.
And you're due to qualify early next year, like spring 2023?
Yeah, but how my course works is I'm basically can practice now. Just everything I see is with a supervisor. So, the last year, I don't know what it was like at your college, but the last year is just purely clinic work and cases. So you're not.
That was my favourite part, though. Seeing it in action, like learning about it's fun, but like seeing how things respond in people is like the best part.
Yeah, because what works for one just doesn't work for the other, and sometimes I look back at some prescriptions where I didn't really follow my gut, and I'm like, it didn't work, and of course it didn't work. And then other ones where I'm like, I'm just going to do this. It feels like the right thing. I've had, I've got my first because all my clients now are just finishing protocols or just starting, you know, in terms of fertility. I've got my first patient who's come back and is pregnant after no periods, and that's just 3 months of work. And I'm just like, you know, she didn't change anything. She did eggs every day because you need to start eating eggs. But she did a birth control cleanse.
Right. So you feel like that made the biggest impact for her?
I think so. Well, we used other remedies because you always can layer lots in. We did an organ support, which was specifically for uterus. Like sepia is a big remedy. A lot of people get prescribed, but what potency you do it is what, like, where it tends to resonate. So if she had some remedies in a six is very low, and that's more material. The higher you get, generally, the deeper it is, and the more it works into the past and to your overall emotional, like, energy is more dynamic there. So yeah, anyway, she did a birth control cleanse, and you know, I think birth control is one of the worst things to happen to women, to be honest, in the 21st century.
You can say that safe on this podcast, because I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, if anyone's
it's like it's created as being this like liberating thing for women, but it actually like ruins our health. And
yeah,
I know you're always sharing about like the relationship. You posted something on stories today about how it affects the like choosing a partner because of the pheromones, and just we're more attracted to people who are similar to us, which is crazy. So no wonder divorce rates are like, what is it, 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce now?
I mean, maybe.
Not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, that t-shirt experience really funny. I don't know if you know, if you haven't done the t-shirt experiment. Did you read about it though when the man did it for the women?
No.
Okay, so the experiment was, in a nutshell, women smelt t-shirts of men and they pinned them on who would be most attractive. The men that they found most attractive were the ones that would have a different miasm to them, or like that's homeopathic talk, but it just means like different immune systems.
Were these women on the pill in this study?
No.
Okay.
So women picked, they were, so there was 2 groups. The women that were on the pill picked the wrong one. They picked the one that didn't align with nature, which would have resulted in like not the most healthy immune system. Funnily enough, in homeopathy, we called the pill like a syphilitic thing. It's against nature. It reverses the process of nature, and you know that is very syphilitic thing. And then they did it with women that weren't on the pill, and they chose the match that was opposite to them, that was most beneficial for immune system, and so on. And then it goes on, they come off the pill and they're attracted to a different smell. But then they did the smell, this is not related to homeopathy, but it's just funny to know. Then they did it with men for women's t-shirts, and there were loads of high rankers, just as you expect. And then there was Annie or Abby that scored the most, and it turns out that Annie was like a chimp.
Oh, I was not expecting that. Oh my god, that's so funny.
Annie wasn't on control. No, Annie was
she was the wild card.
Yeah, so she was like a primate.
That's
so men funny. Are actually more attracted to.
Oh, that makes sense. Oh my god, that was hilarious. I love that you brought that up.
It's just a bit of entertainment, really. It's
that
not
was very good.
To anyone.
No, we'll get back into the science though. And how homeopathy can support so fertility. So you mentioned like you've had success already, like quite quickly as well. We obviously can't rush things, and the body will heal when it's ready, but results can be pretty quick, can't they? With my pain, with your mood, with other symptoms, like we can get quick relief. Unlike other things, even like supplements, it can take months sometimes to start to impact with herbs or whatever.
Yeah, and it depends on the potency. Like a 10 every remedy has a different length of time that it's acting. And I do say to my fertility patients, please wait. But The majority of them come to homeopathy as a last resort. They've been trying for years. So then it's like, what, they don't want to wait, have an amazing patient now. That is like, no, I'm going to wait till we've done the metal cleanse, because polymetals are a big one that generally most fertility patients need. And that tends to be why, not the only reason, but a big reason why there's recurrent miscarriage. And homeopathy can really work as like a hybrid between herbalism and uh, nutrition, and or nutritional detox, like integrative medicine detox, because we can piece together a prescription that has a polymetal cleanse, it has liver and bowel support. So instead of doing enemas, if that's what someone might not want to do, we can really try to get that through the protocol. And because it's where your body's at, you'll never detox more than your body is capable of doing. That's why I really like the homeopathic detox options. But yeah, say you are having recurrent miscarriages, then we can layer in, not always polymetals, but usually you could layer in like uterus support, polyhormones. So we're just giving a broad range of hormones if we don't really know. So even if you don't have diagnostics, usually we can do a lot, because a lot of people don't want to spend on IVF, or they're not ready to spend on IVF, or it costs loads. And it's like, do homeopathy first. It's way cheaper, way less invasive. But also, if we have a diagnosis of PCOS, we can work with that to get ovulation happening instead of things like Clomid, or at worst metformin, which isn't even technically for that, but they give it off label. I don't know why. Even things like twisted uterus, things that people are told are going to stop them. It's not always the case, but I just think, with fertility, it is good to give it at least 3 to 6 months, because although homeopathy is fast, and I like to think that because homeopathy is so dynamic, we could maybe be affecting egg quality in like real time, but we don't know that. And because there is no research on that, it's like, why don't we give it like a good 3 months? And like, I'm preparing for like my second pregnancy now, and I'm doing a metal cleanse. Well, I will be starting it next week, and I'll be doing, just things that are more gentle, like placenta, and we can give breast milk. These are all really nice holding remedies. But there are other things that can cause miscarriage, and they're not metals, if that is like an issue, and that they're different remedy pictures. And we can do different remedies, have miscarriage in the 5th month, miscarriage in the 2nd month. Some remedies like syphilinum, if you have a strong syphilitic miasm, which most patients do when they have recurring miscarriage, you can give 1 high dose of that, and that clears a genetic picture, and that clears a tendency for all of those diseases, like nervous system diseases, ulcerative diseases, the same as itis. So any itis, like arthritis, but any of those we can clear with homeopathy, with like medorrhinum. So there's
there's no way that's not impacting like the next generation. Of course it's going to be, but no, there's no like proof of that.
It definitely does, because you'll notice when the mum heals, the baby heals. But like at the same time, if you look through someone's family history, which we do in homeopathy, you'll see a syphilitic miasm where someone can die with a syphilitic miasm. And if someone's in the room, the minute that person dies, that miasm can jump, because we know that energy doesn't move. It just, it doesn't die, like it goes somewhere. Syphilitic miasm is one of the most like insidious, and people that say like they feel they've been cursed, we can trace it back to like, and they were like at a relative's death, and it feels like they've been cursed, and then that's actually the miasm jumping. So miasms do jump, but generally they're inherited and activated. But it wouldn't be the first time I've seen it, and that's where we get a bit like woo woo and have freaky stories about like curses being lifted and weird
this
shit
so
like
that. Suits you as a person with all of like, your previous like interests and all the witchy stuff, the astrology, like where were you born, like what are the planets doing, all this trauma and yoga and breath work. Like this is just the perfect career path for you.
Combo.
Yes.
Combo.
Definitely. And then into pregnancy again, like safe to use during pregnancy. And some people even start getting into pregnancy during postpartum for the kids' health. So can you share like some common symptoms, and maybe, I know you can't give specifics, but just general remedies and how they could be used for things like morning sickness?
Yeah, so morning sickness is the big one. And if I'm honest with you, if I'd never found homeopathy, I just wouldn't be pregnant again, because I'm like, I never want to do morning sickness again. There's so much you can do in homeopathy. There's I've got a post on my Instagram about morning sickness, so just have a look at that. But and when it's something like that, you could just book in for an acute appointment, which is like a 20-minute appointment, and I don't need much for that. But with pregnancy, when someone falls pregnant, if they're even in the middle of a protocol, I pull them off everything, because at that point, it's like we've done what we need to do. They're fertile. The body's obviously showing it's well enough at that point to get pregnant. So it's kind of like, see what happens. But there are lots of things, stretch marks. We can do things for that, bones, small babies, you could do things for that. Tissue salts are really nice in pregnancy because they're a bit like a nutritional thing. So you can do tissue salt programs, so like protocols. Ones like silica, calc fluor for the stretching and the elastin and collagen balance, because you really want to get that right. Otherwise, you get things like pelvic girdle pain. So there's absolutely loads you can do. And it's hard to say, because every issue in pregnancy, homeopathy can support. I would say even things like strep B, we can work with, which aren't emergencies. We're told they are, but they're not. But things like preeclampsia, that's where we would just say, you need to go to hospital, and you need to, because you can give things that would prevent that, but you would,
like when it's happening and you're pregnant, you don't want to risk it, do you?
Yeah, and homeopathy isn't a preventative. We shouldn't really use it like that, although we do, things like tooth extraction. We like to give emerald, and so the tooth just pops out. We shouldn't really, but we do, because there's so many hard rules about homeopathy, again, like with everything, and I'm a rule breaker, so that makes me a bit of like, college don't really like that, and because I think, unless we learn to break rules, we don't know what's going to work, and you can't do harm with it. But the reason I don't like to give it in pregnancy is just because the body is so receptive, it's so sensitive. So when we do give it, or I would prefer someone to come to a homeopath and say, this is what I'm experiencing, and then we can say, well, actually, what is this? Is this an emotional thing? As we come closer to birth, are we not birthing because we're not ready? That's a different remedy. We're not birthing because the baby doesn't want to move, or the baby's stuck. Is the baby not turning because they're not ready? So that's a different remedy that we give. You might give arnica or pulsatilla to turn a baby. So then when we get closer to birth and labour, my dream for my next birth is to have a homeopath at my birth. I literally don't think I'll find one that will attend my birth, because there are certain birth is going to happen anyway, but there are things that happen that you can use homeopathy for, like you might use drugs if you needed them, like retained placenta, which would technically, they say it's emergency, it's not, but there is Sakali or pulsatilla we can use for that. Birthing the placenta, that can be really tough. There's pulsatilla for that. Transition, that's a whole crazy time. Back labor, when people say they had a back labor and it was horrendous pain, there's remedies for that. So there's a whole bunch, but when you're in labor, of course, like, you're not going to be able to necessarily think. But there is a mum and baby kit, and it has all things for mastitis, really from conception to when the baby's 10, 11 years old. So usually the mums that use homeopathy in pregnancy will then go on to use it with children, or they'll end up using it with their children because they've been to the doctors and nothing can fix their children, colic, etc. Mastitis is another one. And so when we go to postpartum, that healing experience, whether it's been a C-section, whether it's been forceps and you've got a lot going on there, prolapse, even womb infections, which do happen, trauma, as you know, you can get really far just with arnica, but then, there's so much more you can do. You can do things for postpartum depression. If you're prone to it, I like to give homeopathy in a preventative way sometimes. I don't have a problem with that. So there is a lot that can be done. And when it comes to baby and they come and they've got colic, or if they, as much as like the moment they're born, they can go, a whole day without really breathing and crying properly. Actually, that would be a variation of normal. But if they were very blue and lifeless and you were worried, you could give them a dose of like carbo veg, which is called the corpse reviver. It's really great for heart attacks or food poisoning or stomach cramps and loads of other things. But that one, like, you could give them and then they would be back online. Owen's just talking.
Tell Sherry to shut up.
Yeah. So there is so much that can be done with homeopathy that is in alignment with nature, and it's okay. We don't need to just take remedies for the sake of it, but sometimes it just makes life easier. So
and are there any are all companies kind of similar, or are there any like better ones than others?
I don't think so, because I think the energy of who's making the remedy is really the important thing. I really like to use Stellar Homeopathics. They are they're who I send my prescriptions through, and prescriptions are super cheap. If I do a deep protocol with like 10 remedies, it would probably cost no more than like 25-30 pounds. And that's
that can be like one supplement.
But it can be as some of the remedies can be as little as like £3 for the whole prescription. It just depends what we need to do. But then there's Ainsworth and Helios. They're quite reputable. But generally, I don't buy outside of that. I like the mainstream. And I know the lady who does Stellar Homeopathy is quite good, but I think you have to be a practitioner to sign up. So I would say Helios and Ainsworth are probably a good starting place to go down
Amazing.
south. Not up here for us northerners.
Unfortunately not. But it'll be you. Maybe you open a dispensary.
I just can't see it. I just can't. No? I mean,
you're like, you want to be with the person, like coaching them, helping them, telling them what to do.
In my homeopathy drawer, but Alex sent me a WhatsApp. Like, Alex is my fiance. He sent me a WhatsApp the other day with just a picture of my homeopathic box, and he's like, "This is disgusting." I'm like, it's not. It's
but
just
he's
loads
benefited
of
from that box, so
he says. I was telling him to take remedy. Yeah, he basically pulled his groin in football, so he needs a remedy for like overuse and strain and healing. So I'm like, you need to find Rustox, and he's just like, I'm never going to find it in this mess. This is disgusting. How do you expect me to find anything? And then I was just like, well, can you buy me this apothecary cabinet? And then he just sent in the cabinet. It was like £600. I was like, this is what I need. And he's like,
I'm sure he's quiet after that. He don't say anything, no.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you organise it like mine? I'm like, you have 8 remedies. That's it.
I have.
I've got like 200.
It's ever growing.
Yeah, so now I just dispense everything from the pharmacy, unless it's like a specialist remedy, like a sexual trauma remedy that's like a combination or something that I've made specially. Then I won't. I'll just get the pharmacy to send it.
Yeah.
I can't get any more remedies in my house. Or I'm going to get divorced before I'm married.
So by the time this goes live, so this will be in the new year, you'll be, well, you're already seeing clients, you're doing emergency appointments, people can book in with you, whatever stage they're at. But yeah, pre-conception would be a good time, because if we can get you healthy, then your experience during pregnancy and postpartum is going to be good. So yeah, I definitely recommend booking in with Cassie if you have been kind of inspired by this conversation. And I'd love to know for you, Cassie, like, what else would you be doing differently next time? Because you're hoping to fall pregnant in 2023. and obviously you've got homeopathy in your back pocket now to turn to, but anything else that you want to share, and kind of looking back to your first pregnancy that you would do differently?
Well, Vivian, next time, on a really serious note, like my next mission after homeopathy, to go with homeopathy, is to become like a radical birth keeper, which is basically a traditional midwife. I want to basically be like the witch of the West Midlands. Just go around and
But you'll
attend
have to
birth.
travel to Manchester as well and help me whenever that happens.
So for me, I just want a wild pregnancy next time, and a wild birth or a free birth, which for many people feels quite scary at first. It did for me, because it's a step beyond. It's not telling the medical system really you're pregnant, and you can opt in, but in my experience, everything you opt into, there's just more guilt. There's more you're going to kill your baby every time you ring.
And like the later on the pregnancy goes, like they'll get more like,
yeah, and
extreme.
I don't want to go into my pregnancy fighting. Like, I shouldn't have to fight for just physiological birth. Shouldn't have to fight for something that naturally happens in nature literally every single day. And that's not to say that if there's not an emergency, but I'm educating myself. I'm doing a lot of free birth work. I'm learning about traditional midwifery, and I'm actually learning what is an emergency. And at the end of the day, I want people there at my birth who I can just relax and birth with. I will probably have a birth keeper just because I want someone there as like an extra pair of hands. But also the one that I've found, the only close one to me is like 2 hours away. So I'm like, do you know what? If I just birth on my own, it will be fine. Like, so there's a lot of courses you can do to learn to do that. So next time, that's what I'll be doing differently. And the other thing I'll definitely do differently is to have the 40-day postpartum period, which you've probably seen Cassandra's doing it. Cassandra Wild, she's doing, oh no, not Wild.
Well done.
I was back to school with Menstruation Queen. She is doing like the 40-day postpartum, where you just have 40 days where it's meant to be like 40 days just in your house. Maybe I'll go for like a few walks, but I'm definitely not gonna like let people around my house sit and eat nourishing foods and just lie in bed. I need that last time for it to get out of hospital. Yeah, so I'll do that different next time, and just that would be what I'll do, because I don't want anyone interfering with the process, because I think that's when the problems come. And I was thinking, am I throwing the baby out with the bathwater, doing the whole free birth? But actually I've realized that every single thing I have taken to my doctors or medical professionals or midwives, they've just like, it's like you're just nobody. You don't get answers, you don't get support, they're not open to other approaches. Like, I just have no time for that. Like, I don't need to fight at this point in my life. I just need to just get on with it and do it. Like, birth will happen, and at the end of the day, like, on a deeper level, which may sound a bit strange, like, don't get pregnant if you can't accept that death is a part of it. Like, it's a portal. Birth is a portal between life and death. Like, it's not just an everyday thing, and yet it is an everyday thing, but it's like, I have to accept that that's something that could happen, and just to tune in and trust. It will be a bigger lesson for me. I think it will really connect me to myself more than anything, because all that the system does is take people away from themselves more and more and more, and look for sovereignty and answers outside of themselves, and really it's always inside of yourself. And I think it's one of the most like radical things you can do to reclaim yourself as a woman, is to birth alone. And that doesn't mean alone, but just like, what is the system actually offering now? This is why midwives are marching. This is why they're leaving jobs, because birth has become another business. It's not about happy mums and happy babies. It might look it on the surface, but it's not. And
you've had nothing but like bad experience at hospitals and at doctors' surgeries. You've had like trauma actually coming from that. So it makes sense why your body like tenses up and freaks out, and like it turns negative when you go there to birth in your situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll interview the midwife at my practice if she's a home birth midwife. Then I'll interview her. But if she starts coming with like, if you go past 42 weeks, this, if you don't birth placenta, this, I'm going to transfer you this. Or if she even says at one point, I'd prefer to do this over something I want, it's like, no,
Mm.
you sorry. Because it's not about them. It should be about the mother and the baby. And her intuition in pregnancy is so strong, and it's the most powerful a woman can be. And I think there's a very real reason why there are things like the pill or medicalized birth that come along, because they don't always empower us, and they don't always make us realize the power of our hormones, our cycle, our bodies, because women's bodies are powerful. And once you feel superhuman after birth, which people do, these orgasmic crazy births, apparently you're just getting through birth, it's like you're gonna, you know, be quite liberated. So I don't know. I have
Yeah,
views about
but they
it,
don't
but
want that, do they?
no, probably
They don't
not.
want
It's
us
a
to feel
bigger,
like that.
it's a bigger conversation. They don't want it. They just want to give you the vitamin K, put you out of the ward, give you a piece of crappy white toast, leave you alone.
And they were
I'll
like
tell you where the
they
toilet
were trying to
is.
put you back on the pill, weren't they? Like when you were out of it
Yeah.
in the
They
middle of the
came round the
night.
ward. They offered me like Hep B vaccinate. Honestly, I don't know. They were offering me Hep B. They were offering me my COVID jab. They were offering me contraception. I was just like, what else? And then they sent the pediatrician down because I wouldn't give Bonnie. She had double MTHFR or something like that, where she's not going to respond very well to the vitamin K. That's why we chose, not to immunize at this point, or whatever word you want to use for it. So it's like all of those things. They're like coming and basically saying, you realize you're putting your child in grave danger. I'm like, literally, I don't agree, because I'm informed. Like they forget they've met their match with me and Alex,
Hmm.
because Alex is stubborn, go
They've
around.
like blacklisted you at the hospital.
Yeah, and they
Like
can
even if you
give,
want to birth here, like you can't.
well, they just, I just took the oral drops just to shut them up. And I told them I'd had all my flu and
Hmm.
whooping cough, and fine. Like if you want them, have them. But that should be an opt-in. It shouldn't be like a thing that we're pushing you to have. It's like, why?
Yeah, requirement.
And because, I don't know what it is. I don't know. But all I know is that next time birth will be mine and mine only. And it's my thing, and they're not coming near it.
So excited for you. And
You can,
we always joke on our little group chat, me and Amy, you and Abby. Me and Abby are like, we love having you two mums in there because we're just learning all the mistakes, all the I wish I'd done this, all the homeopathy tools. So me and Abby are going to be like great in the next few years.
yeah, Amy's coming down for my postpartum. She's going to be my postpartum
Really?
doula.
Oh my God. I'd love
And I said
that.
to her, will you cut my placenta up and put it in smoothies? And she's like, yeah, yeah, fine.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
of course.
so she
That's a
can
true
know it.
friend.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just only have people there that I'm like feel 100% solid with.
Mm-hmm.
But I need a homeopath for my birth, so if there's a homeopath listening, hit me up. Maybe you'll never by then, Viv.
Maybe I'll do some research. And is it like a good resource, particularly for the birth stuff? A book,
Hmm.
online course that you'd recommend if someone's like really intrigued by what you're saying and maybe wants to do things a little bit more natural?
I've only had the ones in my lectures, and there aren't any. But the best thing to do is just get the mum and baby kit,
Mm.
because the booklet, it'll cover everything. And if there's something it doesn't cover, the chances are it's something that you may need to go to like a doctor for. And you can do both. You can have a medicated birth and have homeopathy. Like I have patients that have elective C-sections because of their experiences last time. They just want to know the baby's fine, and then you can use homeopathy to make that a beautiful experience, to heal.
Yeah,
So it's fine for everyone, and the
yeah.
kits are good. But I want to do a workshop and a webinar on it, but it's like tumbleweed. I don't think people want it. So, but people want fertility right now, so we'll just do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So check where Cassie's at, like current time, because she might be doing something completely different in terms of speciality. But for now, it's like the women's health, hormones, fertility, kids' health. So I'll put all of her details in the show notes. And I just want to thank you like for sharing your story and being so vulnerable. I know that you're used to doing it now, but it's so helpful for people who are currently going through it to know that it's not all sunshine and rainbows in pregnancy and postpartum. Like you really went through it, but you've come out the other side. And yeah, even if someone like tries homeopathy for the first time, I think that is a positive that can come from this episode, and maybe they can learn more and feel more connected to their body and just trust their intuition more. I think that's like your biggest takeaway from this episode. But yeah, is there anything that you want to end on? Anything else coming up in the new year? I know of a big thing.
My pregnancy and my wedding.
The wedding and the pregnancy.
The wedding.
And
wedding.
Qualifying as a homeopath. It's going to be a big year.
Yeah, and like, you know, I don't even feel like stressed about all the things I've got to do really. But yeah, like people want to reach out, just chat about things. You can find my Instagram, it's Flourish with Cassie. I do have a podcast, but yeah, I mean, I'm too busy with patients, and yeah, that doesn't really get regularly updated.
That's what I did though. Like I had a year off, and then you can come back, do like another season.
Yeah,
when you've like learned more about your clients and everything.
Yeah, of course. And so yeah, if people want to reach out, I'm always happy to chat. Like, yeah. So that's all really.
You're not good at selling yourself, Cassie. That you need to work on that.
I used to be, but then I was just so like, this is pre-birth.
Yeah.
I was just still not like authentic. It's very like, woo. And now I'm just like, do you know what? If it resonates, if you feel like, yeah, do you know what? I want homeopathy, I want to get better, it's the missing piece, then come along.
Yeah.
And if you don't, like, I just want to help women like be supported. Like, even if it's not homeopathy, if they're just having a shit day with their baby, just message me. Like, oh yeah, it's shit. Like some days are hard, like because we have no sisterhood anymore, and sad. Yeah,
community is so important. So yeah, I think you're doing amazing, and what you're offering is amazing, and homeopathy really works. I can back it as well.
We're going to shout around Manchester.
I'll be your Manchester representative. And thank you for coming on again. I'm sure you'll be on for whatever 4th or 5th time at some point next year as well. Maybe when you're pregnant again.
That wild pregnancy. I feel like that's
that'll be so good. I can't wait. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a rating and review on your podcast app, as this helps to support the show and it allows it to reach more people with this valuable information. Come and say hi over on Instagram. I'm at Viva Natural Health. And if you haven't already, check out my website, vivanaturalhealth.co.uk, for tons more free resources and to discover how I could support you further. I currently offer one-on-one consultation packages if you want my top level support, then more affordable group programs and self-paced online courses. So there really is something for everyone. If you're ready to change and get some answers but aren't sure which option would be best, take that first step today and apply for a free enrollment call on my website, and we'll discuss the best steps for you to take in order to achieve hormonal harmony. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode.